Hello everyone, it's James and I'm back in the shop again. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. If you watched my last video about making this thickness sander, I put up some plans for people who use Vectric software. That would be software for a CNC machine. And I put up plans that would allow someone with a CNC machine and using Vectric to cut most of the parts for this sander. And I got to admit, I didn't even think the response would be this amazing. We've been getting orders from basically all over the world on that. So I'm going to try something a little different today. We're going to go back to the CNC machine, and we're going to make this clock. Now this is a clock I use as a sample, and it says first name, last name, and the date. Now this clock is made out of cherry, we use 1 inch thick cherry. Actually it's 5/4 that gets planed and sanded. Then the CNC machine cuts it out, and then we finish it and put a mechanism in the back and oops, I got sawdust all over it, and a keyhole to hang it with, a keyhole slot cut with a keyhole bit. Now, if you have a CNC machine and you'd like to make this clock, all you need is a 1/4 inch end mill, you need a 1/8 inch end mill, and you need a 30-degree V-bit, and you need, if you want the keyhole hanger, you need a keyhole bit, and that'll cut out the whole clock. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it on the video here, but afterwards I'm going to publish the plans for this clock. Now this clock took quite a bit of design work to get all the minutes and hours and all the letters and numbers in the right place. I'm going to put the plans for this one up on my website for $10. So if this is something you'd like to make, it'll save you 3 or 4 hours of design time and creating all the tool paths. So anyway, let's get started making this custom clock. Oh, one last thing I almost forgot. For you to use these project plans with either VCarve or Aspire, if you have the Vectric software, you have to have version at least 9.519 or higher. Otherwise, these won't load. So don't order them. Don't order the plans if you don't have at least those versions, 9.519. Thanks. One thing to remember if you buy my project plans to build this clock is that I use my origin in the center of my pieces. I don't come down to the left corner. So remember to start in the center when you set up your CNC machine. So all you got to do now is choose the prettiest side for the front and how you want to orient the grain. Do you want to go this way or do you want to go up and down? I typically go up and down on my clocks. So I believe this is going to be the front, so this will be the back, and let's get it set up. So I've secured the piece to the CNC table. I have put in a 1/4 inch keyhole bit. I've centered it on my XY axis and I've probed it for the distance to the surface of the material. This is a very aggressive bit. I don't know how many inches per minute would come with a bigger, more powerful machine, but with this router I have this dialed down to only 12 inches a minute. So it's a very slow cut, but because it's so aggressive, it's a safer way to go. So I'm not going to put the dust collection on, and we will start this cut right away. Okay, the next cut will be with a 1/4 inch end mill, and it'll cut out the pocket that holds the clock mechanism, and I'll be back when I have that set up. Okay, we've changed to a 1/4 inch end mill, and it's going to cut the pocket for the clock mechanism, and I'll start it without dust collection, but then I'm going to pause the video and do the dust collection and come back when it's done because it makes too big of a mess. So let's get started with that. Okay, so it cut the pocket out, and this is the actual clock mechanism that fits right in there. Of course, it'll be turned around. This faces the front. But it makes a nice tight fit, and I will put a link to where you can get these on Amazon. They're not that expensive, especially if you buy them in bulk. So the next cut I will not be including a tool path for in the plans if you buy them, because this is for an actual client. So I'm going to be cutting my logo into the back of this clock. And that's something I won't film, and it's something that won't be in your toolpath. You'll probably want to make your own logo down here. So I'll be back when we're on the other side of the clock. So now we have this nice pocket for the clock mechanism, and we need this. When I'm on this side, there's a toolpath that cuts a 3/8 of an inch hole for the clock mechanism to slide through. But I learned a long time ago that sometimes these X's don't work out. If I was to just use this, it could be off and the clock mechanism wouldn't fit if the board wasn't square when I drew the center lines. So I did this little jig that fits right in, and I drill the hole all the way through with a 1/8 inch bit. And we'll see if we were right or wrong about that X. See, we were just a little bit off, and sometimes that's enough. If I'd have used that center of the X there, that might have been enough not to let the clock mechanism fit. So this is just a tried and true way. I will be using that as the center of my project when I mount it back up to the CNC table. Just a little trick. Okay, so we've remounted the piece back to the CNC table, and we've made sure that the top is here and the bottom of the clock is here. The keyhole is up here. We don't want to mess that up. And instead of using these elliptical clamps to tighten it down, I go ahead and screw the corners down on this one, because when we cut it out, it's very, very close to the edge on these clocks. This is 11-inch square, and the clock is 10 3/4 in diameter. So sometimes the pressure from pushing on the side and the top would break the tabs during the cutout, and the piece would move and it would ruin it. So just as a precaution, this time I'm going to screw it down, and we'll go ahead. We got a 1/8 inch down cut end mill, and we're going to go ahead and run this tool path without any dust collection so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to center it on the hole and do the probe for for the height of the surface, and then we'll get started. So what I forgot to mention is that what you just saw was actually two different tool paths with the same bit. So these are the little pocket tool paths that mark where the minutes are on the clock, and then it went back and cut the hole for the clock mechanism. So because I used the same bit for both of those tool paths, I used what's called merge tool paths in the Vectric software. So the same thing is going to happen on this next one. I'm going to be putting in a 30-degree V-bit that's going to cut 4 different tool paths, words and numbers and rings, and it's going to finish, this was actually a pocket with a V-bit, so it's going to finish these cuts and combined it all into one tool path, a merge tool path. So let me change the bit and we'll get started. So something else I forgot to mention, this is going to be about a 30-minute cut when you combine all the tool paths together. So I'm not going to video the whole thing. I'll video much of it, but this is for an actual customer. So when it comes time to carving their names in here, I'm going to either show it or blur their names because I don't have their permission to put their name on YouTube. So let's get started with this one. So this is the completed clock face. All that's left to do now is cut it out, and I'm going to do that with a 1/8, I'm going to do that with a 1/4-inch end mill, down cut end mill, and that cuts really close to the edge and it leaves a lot of dust. So I'm going to start it without the dust collection, then stop it, put it on, and then show you in the end how we're going to finish it. So here we go. So that's it for this clock. What I have left to do is sand the edges. I usually put a 1/4-inch round over on the front and the back. And then in all the places where I've cut, I very carefully lay down a thinned out solution of lacquer sanding sealer, and that fills the grain so that when I put the black paint into the engraving to fill the letters and stuff, it doesn't bleed into the grain. It keeps it from bleeding. And I just use regular black latex. It could be house paint for all I know. And then sand it off. And then I use a very light cherry stain, which gives it the color of the one I showed you in the beginning. I'll show a picture here. And again, I'm going to be uploading the project plans for this to my website. I'll put a link on the description of the YouTube video for where you get the clock mechanism. I believe it's under $10. And then go to my website. There'll be a link down below. It'll link you right to the project plans. If you want to make one of these, the plans are $10. You need a 1/8-inch end mill, a 1/4-inch end mill, a keyhole bit, and a 30-degree V-bit, and you can cut the whole thing out. So I hope you enjoyed this project. I'm going to be doing more like this in the future. Link to subscribe and press the like button a few times, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.